I was never innocent in regards to being a weeb, but I certainly wasn't the worst offender. I was an annoying white girl with braces, cystic acne, who desperately wanted her life to be some high school romance anime. I didn't dress the part of a true otaku as we couldn't afford it, and I definitely didn't act like one. I grew up in a very diverse area of the US, with a very well-represented Asian population, so in school most of my friends were Asian. I only had one close Japanese friend, with most being Vietnamese, Chinese, or Filipino. And while my Japanese friend was fluent and very in touch with his culture, he was also pretty nonchalant about it. Now, a lot of girls in my group were freshmen of high school, and were either annoying weebs or had some degree of interest in anime at the very least. I know a lot of them would talk about anime and fangirl over hot anime boys, some even peppering a few bakas and suguis in regular conversation. But no one was as bad as this girl that we will call Nut Destroyer. Overall, Nut Destroyer was a very sweet, academically focused, flute-playing, tiny Vietnamese girl, and around teachers or people, she was pretty shy and quiet, polite. She had a super strict and controlling parents, knew hardly anything about the real world, cussing, and anything that was bad. She was naive to the point where I thought she thought that guys got off on it, because she would go out of her way to act sweet and innocent, disapprovingly freaking out anytime someone made a dirty joke or swore around her. Just looking at Nut Destroyer, you couldn't tell that she was a weeb. She dressed in plain clothes, and kind of overall was pretty boring looking. She honestly wouldn't talk too much about anime either. She would just kind of join in conversations we were having with a, "Oh wow, I like that anime too." The key to Nut Destroyer's weebiness was in how she acted to my Japanese friend. The times when my Japanese friends would get a call from his family during lunch and talk to them in Japanese, ND would practically melt. She would literally squee at my homie, trying to tell his mom that he had to stay late for band practice, or something of that nature. He always brought bento boxes to school with Japanese food in them for lunch, and as soon as he would sit down and try to eat, she would be all over him and making him explain what it was he was eating and try to get him to feed her. My Japanese friend was pretty much irritated at Nut Destroyer, and the only way he could get her to leave him alone was to start cussing and tell dirty jokes. My Japanese friend already had a foul mouth regardless, but it was multiplied exponentially every time Nut Destroyer started getting on his nerves. This worked for a short time. He would start being crass, she would gas, scold him, and then ignore him for being gross, so he could go on and eat in peace. Until one day, the entire dynamic was changed by something that I assume she learned from watching one of those crappy shoujo anime. One day, during lunch, we had all had a good time until Nut Destroyer starts acting all fangirly and annoying. So my Japanese friend starts being crude, which obviously started to upset her. But instead of giving him the cold shoulder, she gets close to him, yells "Baka!" in his face, and then kicks him square in the balls. Everyone else, including myself, looked on in horror as my poor Japanese friend went pale, and then fell immediately to the ground in a fetal position. Nut Destroyer stood over him, looked down in triumph at her victim. The strangest thing to me was that what happened afterwards, though. She looked back at us with a face either expecting laughter or silent approval, I suppose. When she saw that our reactions were the opposite, she came over and started making jokes about how he needs to learn his manners to us. Needless to say, I stayed on the other side of the street from her from then on, and she tried to put the whole anime playfully beating up your friends thing a few more times, much to everyone's horror. But we all learned to dodge her by then. I spent the rest of my high school career in a friendship acquaintance limbo with her. The last memory I have of her was at a sushi grand dinner, where we started talking about unfortunate boners, and she legitimately had no idea what was going on. She's probably out there kicking nuts in the real world now.